Students, let us continue with the ER model to relationship model. So far we have discussed about the mapping entity and the mapping relationship. Now let us see the mapping weak entity set. So a weak entity set is one which does not have any primary key associated with it. So weak entity means that entity, in that entity any field doesn't associated with the primary key. That case you call it as a weak entity set. So let us see the mapping process for this weak entity set. Mapping process means what are the steps you have to follow while you want to create a mapping weak entity set. So here I am writing, so the representation, the component that you have to use for weak entity set is, suppose this is a depends, a relationship with two diamond shape that represents the weak entity set. So weak entity set, and here the weak entity is there, weak relationship and the weak entity set, that is depend. The attributes for this is name, and here the student is another entity. The student is having the roll number, that is a primary key, and name. So here this is a representation of mapping weak entity set. Here the student depends, it's dependent on the name of the student. So a student may depends, means here a student is having the roll number and he is having the name, and here the dependent is dependent on this student entity, but it is not depends upon the primary key. So a weak entity set is one which does not have any primary key associated with. It does not have any relationship with the primary key. It just depends upon the name itself. Okay, it doesn't bother about the roll number, anything. This is a weak entity set. Let us see the mapping process of this weak entity set. First you have to create a table as usual. Create table for weak entity set. So for this you have to create a table for weak entity set. So after that what you have to do, add all its attributes to table as a field. So whatever the attributes are there, you have to add all attributes to table as fields. Okay, so next, third step, you have to add the primary key of identifying entity set. So to identify an entity set, you have to based on the primary key only you will identify the entity set. So then add primary key of identifying entity set. So next, declare all foreign key constraints. If it is having any foreign key, you just declare foreign key constraints. So these are the steps you have to follow while you are creating the mapping weak entity set, mapping process. Okay, this is about the mapping weak entity set. Now let us see the mapping hierarchical entities. So the next topic is the mapping hierarchical entities. So this is one of the important topic. Here in the mapping hierarchical you will came across the specialization and generalization. So ER diagrams, if you take ER entity relationship model, so the ER specialization or generalization comes in the form of hierarchical entity set. So all the specialization and generalizations are represented in the form of hierarchical. Now let us see the mapping process for this. What are the steps you have to follow for the hierarchical entities? First, I'll explain the mapping process. After that, I'll take the diagram, ER diagram. First, create table for all higher level. So here in the generalization and the specialization, means the hierarchical concept, you will get higher levels, okay, entity above, you call it as a higher levels. So these are the higher levels, and below you are having the lower levels, because this is represented in the form of hierarchical. So first create a table for all higher levels entities and as well as lower level entities. So create whatever the fields that you are having. First create a table name, table for higher level entities as well as the lower level entities. Next, second step, add primary key. If you are having the primary key, add primary key of higher levels, higher level entities in the table of lower level entities. Next, third step, suppose in lower level entity, lower level table, in lower level tables, add all other attributes of lower level entities. And declare primary key of, next, declare primary key of higher level table and lower level table. So declare primary key of higher level table and lower level table. After that, declare foreign key constraint. So these are the steps you have to follow for mapping hierarchical entities. First, you have to create tables for higher level and lower level. After that, you have to add the primary keys. After that, in lower level tables, add all attributes of lower level entities and declare primary key of higher level table and lower level table. And if it is having the foreign key, you just declare the foreign key constraints. Okay. So now let us see what will be the pictorial representation, means the ER diagram representation of generalization and the specialization. So we are discussing the hierarchy. So how, let us see. So what is the symbol for this component we will use for the hierarchy? That is A. So for A, here the entities are the person. So a person is having, and the person, a person is a, in the lower level you are having the entities as a student as well as the teacher. Okay, and the entities for here is for the person. A person is having a name, any person. A person may be a student or a teacher. So that person is having the name as well as he is having his age and the gender, it's a male or a female. So whether it is a student or a teacher, a student or a teacher is a person. So this person is having the name, age, gender. So for student, the attributes are the roll number. So for every student, roll number is there. At the same time, for every teacher, employee ID is there. So these are two are the primary keys. So this is here, this is an inheritance concept. A person is a student. At the same time, a person is a teacher. So this student is a person and he is having a name. At the same way, a student is a person, he is having the age as well as a gender. Coming to the teacher. A teacher is a person, he is having the name, age and the gender. In the same way, a person is a student, he is having a roll number. A person is a teacher, he is having the employee ID. So here, these are all the higher levels and these are the lower levels. So here, what is the generalization and the specialization concept? A generalization and specialization will be arranged in a hierarchical representation. So this is a hierarchical representation. So let us see what is a generalization. Let me write here. Generalization. So generalization means a number of entities brought together into one entity based on their similar characteristics. So number of entities, let me write. Number of entities brought together into one entity based on their similar characteristics. So the name, it's saying generalization, gathering, generalization, or it's a completely gathering. So number of entities brought together. So here the entities are brought together into one entity. So these are all the entities are brought together into one entity based on their similar characteristics. So let me take one example for the generalization, then you will understand. So here suppose a member of group will be there. Members of group. A group is, one group will be there. So in the group you are having different members. So suppose a WhatsApp group is there. So a WhatsApp group is having a numbers. A members is nothing but the names of a person. So Anil. Next Mukesh. Gopal. So this is a number of entities are brought together into one entity based on their similar characteristics. So these are all the friends of one group. That is, these are all a group. A group consisting of the members. So these are all come under one group, like a family group. Okay, family members. Family. So a family consists of these attributes. So this is a generalization. So we are just brought together into one entity based on their similar characteristics. So it's everyone is having the similar characteristics. So generalization is brought in. Okay. So next is a specialization. So what is a specialization? So in the same way for generalization, another example is, suppose if you take the birds. So a bird is one entity. Here a pigeon and sparrow, dove. So here also number of entities are brought together into one entity. So this is a one entity based on their similar characteristics. So that is generalization. And what is a specialization? Specialization is just opposite to the generalization. Generalization is brought in together, whereas specialization is dividing into subgroups. It is just opposite to generalization. Okay. Here group of entities divided into subgroups based on their characteristics. So that is the difference between the generalization and specialization. Generalization is brought in together, whereas specialization is dividing into. Entities are dividing. Here a person is divided into student as well as is divided into teacher. So this is a specialization concept. Here a group of entities divided into subgroups based on their characteristics. A person is a student as well as a teacher. So this is about the ER model to relational model. Thank you.